3 days had passed since humanity's humiliating welcome to Nexus Prime. The Stalwart Dawn remained docked at the station, its crew confined to a small section of the lower levels designated for primitive species. The quarters were cramped, and the food dispensers offered only bland nutrient paste, but none of that mattered to Lisa Monroe. She had not slept in over 40 hours. Her small cabin had become a research laboratory, every surface covered with printouts, photographs, and holographic displays. The walls showed images from Earth cave paintings from Lascaux, petroglyphs from the American Southwest, ancient rock art from the Australian outback. Next to each Earth image was a corresponding photograph from Nexus Prime's walls. The matches were perfect, not similar, not coincidental. Perfect. Captain Daniel Hayes entered her cabin and stopped short at the chaos surrounding him. "Lisa, you need to rest. The crew is worried about you." She spun around, her eyes wild with exhaustion and discovery. "Daniel, I cannot rest. Not until you understand what I have found." She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward her main display. "Look at this. This symbol here from the docking bay? It appears in caves in southern France that are 43,000 years old. This one matches carvings found in Turkey that predate every known human civilization." Daniel studied the images. He was not an archaeologist, but even he could see the similarities were too precise to be chance. Perhaps it is some kind of universal pattern. Basic shapes that any intelligent species might develop independently. "That is what I thought at first," Lisa said. "So I looked deeper. I contacted Dr. Nathan Cole back on Earth. You remember him from the pre-mission briefings? He specializes in ancient human sites." She pulled up a new set of images. These are from sites around the world. Sumerian tablets that show what looks exactly like spacecraft. Egyptian hieroglyphs depicting beings in what we now know are pressure suits. The Nazca lines in Peru. Daniel frowned. The Nazca lines are just drawings. Primitive art. That is what everyone believed. But Nathan ran new analysis using orbital imaging data. Lisa's voice dropped to a whisper. "Daniel, when viewed from the correct altitude and angle, the Nazca lines spell out coordinates. Galactic coordinates. And those coordinates point directly to Nexus Prime." The captain sat down heavily on the edge of her cot. His mind struggled to process what she was telling him. That would mean that humans knew about this place tens of thousands of years ago, long before we supposedly developed agriculture, let alone space travel. A knock at the door interrupted them. Kevin Park entered, his face grim. "Captain, you need to see this. The collective has made an announcement." They followed him to the common area where the rest of the senior crew had gathered around a holographic display. Ambassador Vexton's reptilian face filled the screen. "Citizens of the Galactic Collective," Vexton was saying, "I address you regarding the primitive species known as humans. After careful evaluation, the High Council has determined that humanity does not meet the minimum requirements for collective membership. Their technology is insufficient. Their social development is unstable. Their species poses no benefit and potential risk to our established order." The ambassador's golden eyes seemed to look directly at them through the recording. "Effective. Immediately, all member species are prohibited from trading with or providing assistance to humanity. Earth is to be quarantined until such time as they demonstrate sufficient evolution to warrant reconsideration. This matter is closed." The transmission ended. Silence filled the room. Lieutenant Amy Vance spoke first. "They cannot do this. We came in peace. We followed all their protocols. They can do whatever they want," Kevin said bitterly. "They have the power, and we do not. It is that simple." Daniel's jaw tightened. He thought of the billions of people back on Earth who had watched their departure with hope in their eyes. They had believed humanity was finally joining a larger community. Now they would learn that the galaxy had slammed its door in their face. Perhaps not, Lisa said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Perhaps power is not as simple as they believe. She walked to the holographic display and connected her tablet. The image of Vex then was replaced by her research, the symbols, the comparisons, the analysis. I have been digging deeper, she explained, into the collective's own historical databases. Their security is good, but Nathan and I found backdoors, ancient systems that no one has maintained in thousands of years. The display showed genetic data now, complex spirals of information that made most of the crew's eyes glaze over. But Lisa pressed on. Every species in the collective has been genetically mapped. It is part of their membership process. What they do not advertise is that every single species shares certain genetic markers, specific sequences that appear in all of them, regardless of their biology or homeworld. Kevin leaned forward. So they have a common ancestor? Some ancient species that seeded the galaxy? Exactly. Lisa zoomed in on one particular genetic sequence. And those markers? They are human, not similar to human. They are identical to sequences found in human DNA. The room erupted in confused questions, but Daniel held up his hand for silence. What are you saying, Lisa? That humans somehow spread across the galaxy thousands of years ago and created all these alien species? Not thousands of years ago, Captain. Millions. She changed the display again, showing archaeological data from a dozen different worlds. These are artifacts found on collective homeworlds. Items that predate their civilizations by millions of years. Items that contain human writing, human technology, human design principles. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Every species in the collective believes they evolved naturally on their homeworld. They believe humans are newcomers, primitives who just achieved space travel. But the evidence says otherwise. Humans did not just recently reach the stars. We were here first. We were here before any of them existed. Daniel stared at the data, his mind reeling. If this is true, why does no one know? Why did we forget? I do not know yet, Lisa admitted. But I intend to find out. And when I do, Ambassador Vexthin and his collective are going to learn that they have been mocking the very species that gave them life. Kevin smiled grimly. How do we prove it? They will never believe us. They will say we fabricated the evidence. Lisa returned his smile with one of her own. We do not need them to believe us. We just need to make them curious enough to check for themselves. Once they look at their own records, their own genetic data, their own ancient history, they will find the same things I found. She turned to Daniel. Captain, I need your permission to broadcast this information. All of it. To every ship, every station, every world in the collective. Daniel looked at his crew exhausted, humiliated, far from home, and facing a galaxy that had rejected them. But in their eyes, he saw something new. Hope. Do it, he said. Let them see who we really are. Lisa nodded and began preparing the transmission. In a few hours, the entire galaxy would learn the truth that had been buried for millions of years. Humanity was not the youngest species in the collective, that they were the oldest, and they were finally coming home. The starward dawn drifted through the blackness of space like a silver needle threading between stars. Captain Daniel Hayes stood at the observation window, watching the massive space station grow larger with each passing second. After 3 months of travel, humanity's first diplomatic mission to alien civilization was about to begin. Captain, we are receiving a docking signal from Nexus Prime, said Lieutenant Amy Vance from her console. Her voice carried a slight tremor. Everyone on the bridge felt the same mix of excitement and fear. Daniel turned to face his crew. 37 men and women had volunteered for this mission. Knowing they might never return to Earth, they had trained for years, learned everything humanity knew about the Galactic Collective, and prepared for every possible scenario. but nothing could truly prepare them for this moment. "Take us in, Lieutenant," Daniel said calmly. "Nice and steady." Dr. Lisa Monroe stood beside him, clutching her tablet. As the ship's xenolinguist, she had spent the past decade studying the alien transmissions Earth had intercepted. She knew their languages, their customs, and their history, at least what little humanity had managed to decode. The Galactic Collective was an alliance of 47 alien species that had governed this region of space for 6,000 years. Compared to them, humanity was a newborn taking its first steps. Commander Kevin Park joined them at the window. The security chief was a quiet man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Remember the briefing," he said softly. "We smile, we stay polite, and we show them humanity deserves a seat at their table." The stalwart Dawn passed through the station's massive docking bay doors. Inside, the scale of alien engineering took their breath away. Ships of every shape and size filled the bay crystalline vessels that seemed grown rather than built. Sleek predatory craft with angles that hurt the eyes. And massive cargo haulers the size of small moons. Their own ship, humanity's proudest achievement, suddenly looked like a child's toy. A greeting party waited for them at the docking platform. Daniel straightened his uniform and led his delegation down the boarding ramp. Lisa walked on his right, Kevin on his left. Behind them came a dozen crew members selected to represent Earth's diversity. The alien waiting at the front of the greeting party stood nearly 8 feet tall. His scales were deep green, and his eyes were golden slits that regarded the humans with cold interest. This was Ambassador Vexton of the Corvani, one of the founding species of the Collective. "So," Vexton said, his translator device turning his hisses into English, "the hatchlings have finally crawled out of their nest." Laughter rippled through the alien delegation. There were dozens of different species, present crystalline beings that chimed when they moved. Insectoid creatures with too many legs, floating jellyfish-like entities, and others that defied description. Daniel kept his expression neutral. "Ambassador Vexton, on behalf of Earth and all humanity, I thank you for receiving us. We come in peace, seeking friendship and mutual understanding." Vexton's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. "How touching. Tell me, human, how long has your species possessed faster than light travel? A decade? 2? 18 years, Daniel replied. More laughter. A crystalline being stepped forward. Her body was made of what looked like living glass, and light refracted through her in rainbow patterns. 18 years, she repeated, her voice like wind chimes. I am Exora of the Threllian. My people achieved faster than light travel 40,000 years ago. And we are considered young by collective standards. We are all young once, Lisa said, speaking for the first time. We hope to learn from those who came before us. Vexton waved a clawed hand dismissively. Learning requires a mind capable of growth. We have studied your species, human. You have spent most of your existence killing each other over patches of dirt and imaginary lines on maps. You developed nuclear weapons before you developed the wisdom not to use them. Frankly, it is a miracle you survived long enough to reach the stars. The insectoid ambassador clicked his mandibles rapidly. Perhaps they would make adequate servants, he suggested. Simple tasks, nothing requiring real intelligence. Daniel felt Kevin tense beside him, but placed a calming hand on his arm. This was exactly what they had expected. The briefings had warned them that the collective viewed younger species with contempt. They had to prove themselves worthy through patience and diplomacy. We did not come here to serve, Daniel said evenly. We came to join the collective as equal partners. The silence that followed was broken by Vexton's barking laugh. Equal partners? You? Your ship is powered by technology we abandoned as primitive 3,000 years ago. Your weapons could not scratch the hull of our smallest patrol craft. Your medicine, your science, your understanding of the universe, all of it is elementary at best. He leaned down, bringing his reptilian face close to Daniel's. Go home, little human. Return to your blue world and continue your petty wars. Come back in 10,000 years when you have evolved enough to deserve our attention. The alien delegation began to disperse, still chuckling among themselves. Daniel stood firm, refusing to show the humiliation burning in his chest. This was just the first day. They had time. Lisa touched his elbow. Captain, she whispered, look at the walls. Daniel followed her gaze. The docking bay was clearly ancient, its metal walls covered in symbols and markings that must have been thousands of years old. Most were unreadable, worn away by time. But some remained clear enough to see. Lisa's face had gone pale. Those symbols, she breathed. I have seen them before. Where? Kevin asked. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she raised her tablet and began taking photographs, her hands trembling slightly. The symbols were geometric patterns mixed with what looked like primitive drawings, stick figures, animals, celestial bodies. Lisa, Daniel pressed, where have you seen these before? She finally looked at him, and he saw something in her eyes that he could not identify. Fear? Excitement? Disbelief? Earth, she whispered. These symbols are on Earth. I have seen them in caves in France, in ancient temples in South America, in rock paintings in Australia that are over 40,000 years old. Daniel stared at her. That is impossible. I know, she said, still photographing frantically. I know it is impossible, but I am not wrong. These are human symbols, Captain, and they are carved into the oldest parts of an alien space station that was built before humanity supposedly discovered fire. Above them, the Kovani ambassador disappeared through a doorway. Still laughing at the primitive visitors from Earth, he had no idea what the humans had just discovered. None of them did, but they would learn. Soon, the entire galaxy would learn that humanity was not the young newcomer they believed. The truth was far stranger and far more terrifying than any of them could imagine, and it would change everything. The broadcast went out at exactly midnight station time. Every communication channel in the Galactic Collective received the same transmission simultaneously. Lisa had made sure of that, using old access codes from systems so ancient that modern security did not even monitor them anymore. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Starward Dawn, watching the message spread across the galaxy like ripples in a cosmic pond. Within minutes, alarm signals began flashing on their sensors. Ships were changing course. Communication traffic was exploding. And Nexus Prime itself seemed to vibrate with sudden activity. Captain, Lieutenant Amy Vance reported from her station. We are receiving thousands of requests for information. Ships from at least 30 different species are trying to contact us. Kevin Park studied his tactical display with growing concern. We are also detecting weapon systems powering up throughout the station. The Kovani are not happy. Daniel nodded calmly. He had expected this reaction. Maintain our position. Do not power up any weapons. We are diplomats, not soldiers. The main view screen flickered and Ambassador Vexthin's face appeared. The Kovani's scales had turned a dark, angry shade of red, and his golden eyes burned with fury. Human, he hissed, you have violated every protocol of civilized contact. You have spread lies and propaganda through sacred communication channels. You have insulted the heritage of every species in the collective. We have shared evidence, Daniel replied steadily. Evidence that anyone can verify using their own records and their own science. If we are lying, then checking our claims will prove us wrong. What do you have to fear from the truth? Vexthin's claws scraped against something off-screen. You dare speak to me of truth? Your species has existed for the blink of an eye. The Corvani were building empires when your ancestors were still swimming in primordial soup. Were you? Lisa stepped forward, her tablet in hand. Your own historical records say the Corvani achieved spaceflight 12,000 years ago. But artifacts on your homeworld, artifacts your own archaeologists have studied, date back 3 million years. And those artifacts contain writing in a language that matches proto-human script perfectly. She projected the evidence onto the screen. Side-by-side comparisons of ancient Corvani relics and Earth artifacts. Genetic analysis showing shared DNA sequences. Star maps from human caves pointing to Corvani worlds. Vexton's face twisted in rage. Fabrications. Clever forgeries designed to undermine our authority. Then test them yourself, Daniel said simply. Send your scientists to examine the original artifacts. Run your own genetic analysis. Check your oldest databases. If we are wrong, you will prove us liars and have every justification to punish us. But if we are right, he let the sentence hang in the air. The transmission cut abruptly. Daniel exhaled slowly and turned to his crew. Now we wait. They did not have to wait long. Within hours, the first reports began filtering back through the communication networks. Scientists across the collective had begun examining their own historical records. And what they found was causing panic. The Threlian ambassador, Ixora, was the first to publicly acknowledge the evidence. In a broadcast that reached every corner of the collective, she stood before her own people, her crystalline body dim with shock. My people have always spoken of the architects, she said, her voice like distant bells. Beings of soft flesh and warm blood who came from the stars before time was recorded. Our oldest texts describe them as creators, teachers, gods who shaped our world and then departed. We believe these were myths. Stories told to children. She paused, light rippling through her form. The text described the architects in detail. They walked on 2 legs. They had 5 fingers on each hand. They breathed oxygen and ate organic matter. They laughed and wept and loved. For millions of years, we wondered what manner of beings these could be. Now we know. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The architects were human. The revelation spread like fire through dry grass. Every species in the collective had similar legends. The Velthari spoke of the makers who taught their ancestors to build. The Corvani's oldest religions described the first ones who descended from the sky. The gas-dwelling ephemera had songs that had been sung for 100 million years. Songs about visitors from the warm worlds who brought the gift of thought. All of them described humans. On Nexus Prime, crowds began gathering outside the human quarters. But they were not angry mobs. They were pilgrims, believers who had suddenly discovered their gods, were real and living among them. Daniel watched the growing crowds through the observation window. He did not feel like a god. He felt like a man who had stumbled into something far bigger than himself. Captain, Kevin said quietly, joining him at the window. The Collective Council has requested our presence. All 47 member species will be represented. They want answers. Do we have answers to give them? Daniel asked. Lisa appeared at his other side. Not all of them. We know the what humans spread across this galaxy millions of years ago and created or influenced every intelligent species. We do not know the how or the why. And we definitely do not know why we forgot. Then we tell them what we know and admit what we do not, Daniel decided. No more lies, no more secrets. Just the truth, whatever it turns out to be. They walked through the station toward the council chambers, surrounded by a silent escort of alien guards. The corridors that had seemed so hostile days ago now felt different. Aliens stopped and stared as they passed. Some bowed. Others reached out tentatively, as if touching a human might grant them some kind of blessing. Daniel kept his eyes forward. This was not the reception he had hoped for. He had wanted respect, partnership, equality, not worship. The council chamber was a vast circular room with seats arranged in rising tiers around a central platform. Representatives from every member species filled those seats. Thousands of alien faces watching as the human delegation entered. At the highest point of the chamber sat Vexton, but his earlier arrogance was gone. He looked like a man, like a being whose entire understanding of the universe had collapsed. "Humans," he said, and his voice carried none of its former contempt. "We have examined your evidence. We have checked our own records. What you claim is not impossible." Lisa stepped forward. "It is more than not impossible, Ambassador. It is true. Every genetic database in the collective contains proof. Every archaeological site on every homeworld contains human artifacts. Your ancestors knew this once. Somewhere along the way, the knowledge was lost or hidden. But why?" The question came from Exora, her crystal form pulsing with agitation. "Why would the architects create us and then vanish? Why would they let us forget?" Daniel answered honestly, "We do not know. Our own history has been lost as well. Earth has no records of this ancient civilization. We believed we were alone in the universe until we invented radio and heard your transmissions. Whatever happened millions of years ago, we forgot it too." The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Species that had considered themselves ancient and wise were suddenly children again, confronting mysteries they could not explain. Then a new voice spoke, cutting through the noise like a blade. It was deep and resonant, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "I know why." All eyes turned to the speaker. At the very back of the chamber, in shadow so deep that no one had noticed him, sat a figure that defied description. He was ancient beyond measure, his form shifting and unclear, as if reality itself was uncertain of his shape. "I am the chronicler," the figure said, "and I remember when the humans first left their world. I remember when they built Nexus Prime. I remember everything." The chamber fell absolutely silent. Even Vexton looked afraid. "It is time," the chronicler continued, "for you to hear the true history of the galaxy, and for the humans to remember who they really are." Daniel felt his heart pounding in his chest. He had come seeking equality among the stars. Instead, he was about to learn that humanity was not just one species among many. They were the beginning of everything. The chronicler descended from the shadows like a dream taking physical form. His body seemed to be made of memory itself, glimpses of ancient stars, echoes of forgotten voices, fragments of a past so distant that even time had lost track of it. Every being in the council chamber watched in silence as he approached the central platform where the human delegation stood. Daniel Hayes felt a strange sensation wash over him, something between fear and recognition, as if a part of him remembered this entity from a life he had never lived. "Do not be afraid," the chronicler said, though his voice carried no comfort. "It was simply a statement of fact. What I am about to show you is your birthright, the heritage that was stolen from you, that you chose to have stolen." He raised one shifting hand, and the entire chamber transformed. The walls dissolved, replaced by a vast holographic display that surrounded them completely. Stars wheeled overhead, galaxies spun in the distance, and time itself seemed to flow backward. 400 million years ago, the chronicler began, long before any species currently in the collective existed, a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system gave birth to intelligence. Your planet, your species. The display showed ancient Earth, recognizable but different. The continents were arranged in unfamiliar patterns, and the oceans were deeper, darker. But the beings that walked its surface were unmistakably human. "You called yourselves the Cedars," the chronicler continued, "and you were magnificent. The images shifted to show human civilization at its peak. Cities of crystal and light that made Nexus Prime look like a primitive village. Ships that swam through space like living things, crossing galaxies in moments. Technology so advanced it appeared to be magic matter created from nothing, time bent like soft metal, life shaped with casual ease. Lisa Monroe stared at the images with tears streaming down her face. She did not know why she was crying. The sadness seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her. A grief for something she had lost without ever knowing she had it. For 100 million years, humanity spread across the universe, the chronicler said. You explored every corner of existence. You mapped dimensions that other species cannot even perceive. And when you found worlds that could support life, but had none, you created it. The display showed humans working on a barren planet, introducing organisms, adjusting atmospheres, engineering ecosystems from nothing. Then, on those worlds, they created intelligent beings shaping DNA like artists shaping clay, giving the gift of thought to creatures they designed. Every species in this collective, the chronicler said, gesturing to the assembled representatives, exists because humans chose to create them. The Kovani were engineered to thrive in desert environments. The Threllians were designed to process light as food. The Velthari were crafted for hive coordination. Each of you is a masterwork, a testament to human creativity and compassion. Vex then rose from his seat, his scales pale with shock. We are artificial? Manufactured? You are children, the chronicler corrected gently. Created with love, designed to flourish, given every gift your parents could provide. Humans did not make you to serve them. They made you to join them, to share the universe, to add new perspectives to the great conversation of intelligent life. He turned back to the human delegation. But eternity is a long time, even for beings as powerful as the Cedars. The images changed again, showing something unexpected. Humans sitting in empty halls, staring at nothing. Humans wandering through magnificent cities with hollow eyes. Humans who had everything but found joy in nothing. After 100 million years, your ancestors grew weary, the chronicler explained. They had seen everything, built everything, done everything. The universe held no more mysteries for them. Wonder itself had died. Daniel found his voice. What happened to them? To us? They made a choice. The display showed a great gathering of humans, billions of them. Perhaps more assembled around a world that Daniel recognized with a shock. Earth. But Earth as it had been millions of years ago. They decided to return home, to seal away their technology, their knowledge, their memories, to become primitive again, to live and die as mortals, to let themselves evolve anew on the world that had birthed them. The chronicler's voice grew softer, almost tender. They wanted to experience wonder again, to look up at the stars and not know what they were, to discover fire for the first time, to feel the joy of learning, of growing, of not knowing what tomorrow would bring. Lisa understood now why she had been crying. Somewhere in her DNA, in the deepest parts of her being, she carried the memory of that choice. The sacrifice of omniscience for innocence. They erased themselves, she whispered. They gave up everything to feel alive again. Yes, the chronicler nodded. They buried their cities beneath the earth. They locked their technology in vaults beyond detection. They rewrote their own genetics to remove the enhancements that made them godlike. And then they forgot. They became exactly what they wanted to become: primitive, curious, mortal, human. The display showed the transformation. Gleaming cities sinking into the ground. Great ships departing for hidden places beyond known space. Humans walking into machines that stripped away their memories, emerging as simple beings who looked up at the stars with wonder instead of boredom. I was created to remember, the chronicler said. to watch over the children they had made, to guide them gently without revealing too much, and to wait for the day when humanity would return to the stars and be ready to remember. He turned to face Daniel directly. That day is today, Captain Hayes. You have passed the test your ancestors designed. You developed space travel again, not through inheritance, but through your own ingenuity. You reached out to other species with open hands instead of closed fists. You sought equality rather than dominion. The chronicler smiled. At least, Daniel thought it was a smile. Your ancestors would be proud. You have proven that the choice they made was correct. Humanity can experience wonder again and still choose wisdom. The council chamber began returning to its normal state, the holographic display fading away. But nothing would ever be truly normal again. The representatives of 47 species sat in stunned silence, processing the revelation that everything they knew about history was wrong. Exora spoke first, her voice trembling. What happens now? Do the humans reclaim their ancient power? Do they rule us as they once did? All eyes turned to Daniel. He felt the weight of their fear, their hope, their uncertainty. These beings had just learned they were created, that their entire civilizations were experiments, projects, children's toys of a species they had mocked days ago. He thought carefully before answering. What would his ancestors have wanted? They had given up godhood for the chance to grow again. They had not wanted power. They had wanted meaning. We are not the Cedars, he said finally. We carry their DNA and apparently their legacy. But we did not build those cities. We did not create those species. We are the product of their sacrifice, humans who had to earn everything they have, just like all of you. He looked around the chamber at the incredible diversity of intelligent life. Beings of crystal and flesh, of gas and metal, of light and shadow. All of them, he now knew, were his family. Our ancestors wanted to start over, he continued, to grow alongside you rather than above you. I think we should honor that wish. Whatever ancient technology is hidden on Earth, whatever power we could reclaim, that is not who we are anymore. We are explorers, learners, dreamers. Just like you. Kevin Park nodded slowly, understanding what his captain was saying. Lisa smiled through her tears. The Cedars made a choice, Daniel concluded. And we are making ours. We did not come here to rule. We came here to belong. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, slowly, Vexton rose from his seat. The Kovani ambassador descended the tiers until he stood before Daniel, his massive form towering over the human. I mocked you, Vexton said quietly. I called you primitive. I laughed at your ship, your technology, your ambition. He lowered his head, a gesture of submission that Daniel had never seen a Corvani make. I was the primitive one. I judged by power alone and missed wisdom entirely. We all have things to learn, Daniel replied. That is the point, is it not? That is what makes existence worth living. Vex then raised his head, and something had changed in his golden eyes. Not worship, not fear, something better, respect. Welcome to the collective, the ambassador said. Elder brother. Around the chamber, other species began rising, echoing the sentiment. The chronicler watched in silence, and if ancient entities could feel satisfaction, he felt it now. The children had finally met their parents, and both were better for it. 1 week had passed since the revelation that shook the galaxy to its core. The news had spread to every inhabited world, every station, every ship capable of receiving transmissions. Humanity, the species that had arrived as beggars at the collective's door, was now recognized as the oldest civilization in existence, the creators of all intelligent life. Captain Daniel Hayes stood in his quarters aboard the Starboard Dawn, packing the few personal items he had brought from Earth. The ship was preparing to return home. carrying news that would transform human civilization forever. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Lisa Monroe entered, looking more rested than she had in weeks. The dark circles under her eyes were fading, and something like peace had settled over her features. "The chronicler asked to see us before we leave," she said. "All three of us, you, me, and Kevin." Daniel nodded and followed her through the station corridors. The journey to the chronicler's chamber was very different from their first walk through Nexus Prime. Now, aliens bowed as they passed. Some reached out to touch them gently, as if contact with a human might connect them to something sacred. Others simply stared with expressions of wonder and reverence. Daniel found it uncomfortable. He was a ship captain, not a deity. But Lisa had explained that this reaction would fade with time. The shock was too fresh for the galaxy to treat humans as ordinary beings. Eventually, the worship would settle into something healthier. Kevin Park was waiting for them outside an ancient doorway that seemed to be made of solidified starlight. The security chief looked troubled. "Before we go in," Kevin said quietly, "there is something you should know. Our intelligence people have been monitoring collective communications. Not everyone is happy about what happened." "What do you mean?" Daniel asked. "Some factions see humanity as a threat. They think we will reclaim our ancient power and enslave them. Others want to worship us as gods, which creates its own problems. And a few—" He hesitated. "A few are talking about destroying Earth before we can fully awaken." Lisa frowned. "They would attack their own creators?" "Fear makes people do terrible things," Kevin replied. "We need to be careful. This is not over just because the council accepted us." The ancient door opened before Daniel could respond, revealing a chamber that seemed to exist outside normal space. The chronicler waited within, his shifting form more defined than before, almost appearing as an elderly human man. "Please, enter," the chronicler said. "We have much to discuss before you return to your homeworld." They stepped into the chamber, and the door sealed behind them. The space inside was comfortable, filled with soft light and what appeared to be floating cushions made of solidified clouds. "I have watched your species for 400 million years," the chronicler began without preamble. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed miracles and tragedies beyond counting. But I have never seen anything quite like what you did in that council chamber." Daniel shifted uncomfortably. "We simply told the truth. You did more than that." The chronicler's form shimmered with something like approval. "When you learned what humanity once was, you could have demanded anything. Power, worship, revenge for the mockery you endured. Instead, you asked for equality. You chose to honor your ancestors' sacrifice rather than reclaim their legacy." He gestured, and a holographic display appeared showing Earth floating in space. "Your ancestors left gifts buried beneath your world. Technology that could make humanity dominant again. Weapons that could destroy stars. Weapons that could destroy stars. Knowledge that would take other species millions of years to develop." Lisa leaned forward. "Where are these gifts hidden?" "Everywhere. Beneath your oceans, inside your mountains, in caverns that human instruments cannot currently detect." Your ancestors were thorough. They wanted to ensure that if humanity earned their way back to the stars, they would have the tools to protect themselves. The chronicler's expression grew serious. "But these tools come with dangers. Your friend is correct. There are factions within the collective that fear you. They are already making plans." "What kind of plans?" Kevin asked sharply. "Some advocate for preemptive strikes against Earth. Others argue for containment surrounding your system with blockades to prevent human expansion. A few extremists speak of more permanent solutions." The chronicler paused. "I tell you this not to frighten you, but to prepare you. The path ahead will not be easy." Daniel absorbed this information calmly. He had expected resistance. Transformations of this magnitude never happened smoothly. What would you advise? He asked. The chronicler smiled, a warm, almost human expression. Your ancestors created me to guide, not to command. The choices must be yours. But I will say this. The technology hidden on Earth includes defensive systems capable of protecting your world against any fleet the collective could assemble. You would be safe from attack, but isolated, Lisa said thoughtfully. Protected but alone. Precisely. Safety and connection often work against each other. You must decide which matters more. Daniel thought about the crowds on Earth who had watched their launch with hope. About the children who dreamed of stars they might never reach. About a humanity that had spent its entire history looking up at the night sky and wondering if anyone else was out there. We did not come this far to hide behind walls, he said finally. Our ancestors gave up immortality because they wanted to feel alive again. Locking ourselves away would betray that gift. The chronicler nodded, looking pleased. Then you will need allies. True allies, not worshippers or subjects. Species who will stand beside you as equals. Ixora, Lisa said immediately. The Thrullian ambassador. She was the first to acknowledge the evidence. Her people seemed genuinely interested in connection rather than domination. And Vex then, Kevin added, surprising the others. He apologized publicly and called Captain Hayes' elder brother. For a Kovani, that is an extraordinary gesture. If we can bring him fully to our side, others will follow. The chronicler created another display showing a map of the galaxy. Certain regions pulsed with different colors. The green areas are species likely to welcome humanity. The yellow are uncertain. The red are hostile. He pointed to a cluster of red near the galactic core. The most dangerous opposition will come from the Harmony Consortium, an alliance of species that has quietly controlled collective politics for thousands of years. They see humanity as a threat to their power. Are they planning something specific? Daniel asked. They are gathering resources and allies. My estimate is that you have perhaps one standard year before they move against Earth directly. Use that time wisely. The chronicler's form began to fade slightly, as if the effort of manifesting so clearly was draining him. One more thing, he said, his voice growing distant. Your ancestors left something else on Earth, not technology or weapons. A message, stored in a place only humans can access. It explains everything, why they made their choice, what they hoped for the future, and what they wish for their descendants. Where is this message? Lisa asked urgently. You will know when you are ready. The path will reveal itself. The chronicler smiled one last time. Go home, children of the Cedars. Tell your people what you have learned. Help them understand that they are not the end of humanity's story. They are the beginning of a new chapter. His form dissolved completely, leaving them alone in a chamber that suddenly felt ordinary. The three humans stood in silence for a moment. Then Kevin spoke. Well, that was a lot to process. Lisa laughed, a release of tension that they all needed. The greatest scientific discovery in human history, ancient conspiracies threatening our planet, and somewhere on Earth, there is a message from our million-year-old ancestors. Just another Tuesday. Daniel smiled despite everything. This was his crew. These were his friends. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They returned to the Starward Dawn and prepared for departure. The entire station seemed to come out to watch them leave. Thousands of aliens, crowding observation decks and viewing platforms, witnessing the departure of beings they now understood were living legends. As the ship pulled away from Nexus Prime, Lisa stood at the observation window, watching the massive station shrink into the distance. We built that, she said softly. Millions of years ago, humans built that station. And now we get to explore it all over again. Daniel joined her at the window. This time, we do it as equals. No more gods. No more children. Just travelers sharing the same universe. Behind them, the galaxy waited. Allies and enemies, wonders and dangers. Secrets buried for millions of years and truths that would reshape everything humanity believed about itself. The Starboard Dawn entered hyperspace, carrying its crew toward home. Toward Earth. Toward a future that neither ancient seeders nor their modern descendants could have predicted. The elder race had returned, and the greatest adventure in human history was just beginning.